Hi, and welcome back to Social Studies with Miss Wardell. So we've been talking a lot about chapter 14 in Social Studies. Today we're going to be talking about page 88. Before I go over page 88, I'll also want to go back and look at page 87. So if you go back to page 87 with me, because we are breaking down which group of North American Indians that we're talking about. And we've discussed that there are three different cultural types. There are the Plains Indians, the Northeast North American Indians, the Southeast North American Indians, and today we are primarily only talking about the Northeast North American Indians. So this talks about the location, the climate, and what life was like for them in the Northeast, okay? So the location and the climate says east to west. The Northeast region stretches from the Atlantic Ocean across the Appalachian Mountains. Remember, this is where the Appalachian Mountains start and travels all the way down to just west of the Great Lakes. These are also including the Great Lakes. We talked about that the other day, right over here. You see them? Okay. North to south, the Northeast region stretches from Virginia to the U.S.-Canada border and even into Canada along the Atlantic coast. The climate, so when it talks about, so from north to south, so going up and down, this is how far it stretches, right? Versus east to west going sideways. And then the climate, meaning the weather, the Northeast has 4 changing seasons: hot summers, cool autumns, cold winters, and warm springs. The area gets lots of rainfall, cold winter storms, and bring deep snow. So of course they would get a lot more snow than maybe, say, down in the Southeast or the Plains. Who lived in the Northeast? Tribes in the Northeast included the Iroquois and the Shawnee. The Shawnee also hunted and built villages in Tennessee. Eastern Woodland Indians, these are American Indians in the Northeast, were known as the Eastern Woodland Indians. So within each of these groups there were subgroups, right? Why? They lived in eastern North America and in an area with many forests. So that's why they were called the woodland. Customs, food. Oh, here we go. American Indians in the Northeast hunted fish and gathered food from forests. They also farmed. They grew corn, beans, and squash. Tribes near the Great Lakes and the Atlantic Ocean did more fishing, and tribes further away from large bodies of water did more farming. That makes sense. Customs, clothing. So here this is talking about the clothing. American Indians in the Northeast made their clothing including shoes from the hides. So if I don't know what hides is, I can keep reading, or there's a vocabulary box over here. Or skins of the animal they hunted. They soaked and scraped the hide to turn into pieces of clean, soft leather, and they used it to make clothes and shoes. Men usually wore a leather breechcloth. They often wore leather leggings and moccasins to protect their legs and feet from the thorns and other sharp objects. Women usually wore a leather skirt and moccasins, and sometimes they also wore leggings. American Indians often decorated their clothing with stitching, painting, or shells. Deerskin was popular for summer clothes because it was thin and not too warm. In winter, Northeast Indians made clothes from beaver and bear furs and wrapped themselves in thick buffalo hide to stay warm because, again, remember, they had cold winters with lots of snow. Here it talks about the housing customs. So again, I'm on page 88. I'll put that at the top just so you know. So now I'm on page 88. Most northeastern Indians lived in a permanent village. They used the natural resources around them to make shelters. A wigwam was made by bending young trees to form the frame of a small round home, and pieces of bark were woven together and tied into the frame. Usually each family had its own wigwam. So here you can see it kind of looks like a hut, some sort of a house, right? A longhouse. Boy, how cool is this? We know what this is because of our Vikings unit, right? This had a rectangular wooden frame and a curved roof. Large pieces of bark were sewn together, and the bark sheets were tied over the frame. Several families lived together in a longhouse. We had talked about this within our Viking unit. Lots and lots of Vikings, they used to live together in long houses. So you would have one long house for your entire family. The Iroquois called corn, beans, and squash the Three Sisters. This is an interesting fact. The Three Sisters grew well together because they were each a very different height, and many American Indian groups grew the sisters. So this is maybe a common thing between all the groups. Comprehensive cross-check. So now we're just talking about what is it that we've learned now based on what we have read about the Northeast North American Indians. It says complete this chart. So physical environment, the climate. So this makes me think of weather, right? So this is the weather. So where I go back and find this, I did not read this on page 88. Let's see. So I know that I read this about it on page 87. Natural resources. I think this was on page 87 as well. Shelter. This definitely came from page 88. So for today that we read. And then clothing, you should have read that on page 87 yesterday. Okay, so now that I know where to find these, I'm going to go back and look at climate, right? So climate, here at the very top it talks about it. So it says, let's see, oh, here's climate. So this is really important. So I might highlight this or underline it, right? Because we want to know this about this specific region. It says that has 4 changing seasons. Okay, so go back. I'm going to put it has, we're not writing the number 4, we're going to spell it out. 4 changing seasons, right? With, talked about hot summers. I don't know about you, but I'm ready for summer. Cool autumn. If you don't know what autumn is, so that just talks about the fall. I had warm spring. And cold winters. Right? So again, I can find all of that over here, where it talks about cool autumns, warm, cold winters, and warm springs. It also says they get a lot of rainfall and a deep snow. So I might even include that, right? So I could say lots of rainfall. So lots of rain year round. And deep snow in winter. Okay. For natural resources, I mean, you think about this. So, what is a natural resource? It's something that you can use and take from the land, right? So, of course, they use things like, I might just list them here, water. So, when you list, you've got to put commas in between. Trees, plants. I mean, of course, they said that they fish. When they talk about using animal hides, so they use animals in more than one way, whether they're eating or they're using it to take care of themselves. So we could say animals to hunt. And they plant. Let's see, what was it that they said those three sisters? Corn, beans, and squash, right? Remember, so that's what they planted. So it could even say that. So with food, they grew corn, beans, and squash, right? So they plant corn, beans, and squash. For shelter, so we talked about this. There are two different types of shelters on page 88. Talked about wigwams and longhouses, right? So we can put wigwams. And longhouses. And then I'm going to let you fill in for like an independent part, the part about clothing, okay? So I'm going to let you fill in this part about clothing, all right? And I can't wait to see what you put. Remember, I've already given you a hint of where to find it on page 87, right? And then we went through and we read it. So I hope you enjoyed it. I'm really having fun learning about these Indians, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.